This episode is brought to you by Indie Insights. Indie Insights is our bi-weekly newsletter and love note to the film industry, movies, and the creatives that make them, not to mention you, our esteemed listeners. Inside, you'll find curated industry trends, articles, exclusive commentary, and underappreciated films from filmmakers like you worldwide. And the best part is that it is completely free. So join today at www.bonsai.film. It takes just a few seconds, and once you sign up, you'll get the very next newsletter on Friday morning. It's that simple. Go to www.bonsai.film to get Indie Insights, our bi-weekly newsletter, and join a network of film creatives just like yourself. And don't worry, we'll never sell your information or spam you with a bunch of nonsense emails, just the bi-weekly film industry goodness you need. And if you ever tire of Indie Insights, simply unsubscribe. No gimmicks, no games. So go to www.bonsai.film to get Indie Insights for free. You're listening to Make It, a podcast by Bonsai Creative that helps creatives in film get where they're going faster by sharing the advice, knowledge, and insights of professional creatives across the film industry. I'm your host, Chris Barkley.
Hi, everyone. I'm pleased to be here. My name is Denise Greene. I'm the Director of Programs at Black Public Media, and I oversee the training, funding, and distribution initiatives for traditional media projects. You might know me as the series producer or BPM itself for our series Afropop, which is currently being distributed on public television or on pbs.org. And Afropop is a series that showcases films from around the world, highlighting the Black global experience. And also, we currently have a rolling call that we just announced yesterday, a call for completed films, and we have an open call coming up in the fall for production funding. As funders, we have a number of films that are in our pipeline with upcoming premieres on PBS. And these films are currently making their rounds in the festival circuit, like Tribeca Film Festival coming up in June and Black Star in August.
Denise Greene, welcome to the Make It podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. And I want to give this audience a deeper sense, a richer sense of where you've been and who you are. So I'm going to read from a bio. And as I always say, this is the internet. So if anything's incorrect or needs to be amended to, you just let me know. Denise A. Greene is a Emmy and Peabody Award winner with producing and directing credits on a range of projects, such as a tribute video for the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in honor of esteemed filmmaker Charles Burnett, New York Times Op Doc, When Music Turns Deadly, Free Angela and All Political Prisoners, and Pioneers of 13. Also, the Black Side series, I'll Make Me a World, which I watched all of and I thoroughly enjoyed, and Black Side's Malcolm X Make It Plain. Alongside her independent film projects, Denise joined Black Public Media as the director of the New Media Institute, an extensive program training professional filmmakers in the latest digital technologies. Preceding her documentary career, Denise started in children's programming, working in casting as a senior researcher for Sesame Street. Her most recent recognition in children's programming includes a Parents' Choice Award for her Nick Jr. Black History Month interstitial, and we'll talk about what that means, I believe, down the line here. And Denise is thrilled to be at Black Public Media to direct funding and training initiatives such as 360 Incubator. Plus, Denise, how was that?
That was great. Thank you so much. I I appreciate the quick journey. Just reminded of how each and every one of those projects shaped me in one way or the other. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable what a good summary of your career can do. It reminds you that you have had an impact on this world and on people beyond your knowledge, more than you could ever know that you've impacted. So thank you for all this work that you've done, because it has been meaningful work. I normally would start this podcast in this conversation from a position of like your origin story. But I want to start with Black Public Media and up front, because it's so interesting. And we will bounce around. That's what we do on the Make It podcast. So we'll go on all sides of the planet here. But I want to talk about it because you guys do something really tremendous. I mean, you offer $225,000 of funding for award-winning or the winning pitches, and you are the director of program initiatives. So I want to just start with that. What does that role mean, and what are your responsibilities?
Sure. So there's as a director of programs, I concentrate on traditional media projects. So scripted and nonfiction, short and long form films. And then we have another division within BPM called BPM Plus that works with immersive media projects. So we've been branching out in a really good position to help filmmakers working on all types of platforms and types of storytelling. And so under director of programs, under the traditional space, we are really looking to support films with funding and really mindful of where the sticking points are for our filmmakers. So we do have opportunities for our open call, which is production funding. That's larger amounts of money that will make sure that films can move from one stage to the next. And then we have discretionary funding, which is really for our past grantees or projects that already have PBS commitment that can offer either seed funding or finishing funds. The two other really hard, early money and the last bit of money are really hard to get. So that's what our discretionary is for. And then our incubator is for filmmakers who have one or two films under their belt and really trying to get the next one off the ground, because there seems to be a lot of focus on the immersive or the emerging or the new filmmaker, but it's that second round, that sophomore project that you need support in. So that's where the 360 Incubator fits in. So that's a combination of a professional development and a funding program, in the sense that it runs into Pitch Black, which we're really excited about the fact that we are now holding Pitch Black on an annual basis. It'll either support our incubator fellows or it'll support some of our projects coming straight through open call.
Yeah, it's incredible what you guys are doing. And I appreciate that note about that sophomore filmmaker. We preach that all the time. One of our missions is to make sure that first-time director gets a second time to make a film. So often an independent, you go out, you have all the ambition in the world, a big dream, and sometimes it's not realistic. You go out there, you make mistakes, you're not able to make your money back for your investors, and that really culminates the end of your career. You start shooting music videos, or maybe you're doing commercials. You wanted to do more documentary, you wanted to do more feature, but you've hit this point of loss of confidence in the process, loss of faith in yourself, loss of faith from your investors. And so with this program, a lot of first-time filmmakers that have a ton of promise would get a second, opportunity to make a film. what are or what does the Netflix and Paramount support of Black public media entail?
So we have a number of tremendous and generous funders. CPB is one of them. And so when it comes to our project awards, that's primarily the support of CPB. And when we have Netflix and Paramount coming in, they're coming in to help our programming. So like pulling off Pitch Black, there's some funding that needs to support those activities, and that's what they're there for. And it is because of that additional support that we're able to hold this annually. So we're incredibly thankful that we can do that. And also our new partnerships will help us be able to focus on certain areas. Like we'll be able to focus on shorts only, or children's program only, or maybe environment only. So it gives us, several different avenues to present to our filmmaking community, that could be the perfect fit for what their projects are.
That's very good.
Yeah.
A part of the BPM, and again, that's Black Public Media for the audience, part of the mission is to distribute stories about the global Black experience. And the goal is to inspire a more equitable and inclusive future. How have you found the Black experience to be in other parts of the globe? How are they like, what's the worldwide view of the Black experience versus just the U.S. experience in your view?
Well, there's many, many commonalities. And I think that's what Afropop does, is sort of, when we curate titles from filmmakers from around the world, we see connections that are similar to the stories here in the States. And I think Afropop is a place to celebrate the diaspora. So, those films, we work hard to actually, Afropop was designed to just show the diversity within the Black experience, looking at the experience as a whole across the countries, right, across the world, as opposed to comparing stories. We're really looking for those connections. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does, and it's an interesting phenomenon, though, right? Like that, we understand where some of the Black experience, at least that's negative, comes from in the United States. Like it's very obvious, right?
Right.
So, we're working our way through slavery, and from that point. And one of our mentors, Dick Gregory, used to always say that it took the Jewish people 9,000 years to do that. So just give us some time, and we'll be where we need to be. Sort of as a response of people being critical, particularly sort of white people being critical of how little, Black people have accomplished as a community, which is a completely unfair narrative. But it is interesting that, you go to other places around the world and you can kind of find similarities in those disparities.
Right.
I'm always surprised to hear, even where slavery didn't exist, you still have a bit of a struggle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If that's fair to say, is there a place in the world where outside of Atlanta that isn't Black utopia, or that is Black utopia?
Right. Well, we haven't, I guess, in curating the work, it doesn't, shine light on that. But in terms of, the stories and making those parallels, this current season, we have a number of films. So Afropop actually is a platform for stories in the States and outside.
Right.
We do have a lot of stories from around the world. And so people might not think of it as including US stories as well. But so this current season, season 14, we have a film about a Black British soul band. And so we get to explore their struggles and see those commonalities with, Black musicians here in the States. And then Revolution from Afar is a film that has really taken off, and looking at the Sudanese community here in the States and their connection back home to their relatives, and to the looking at the revolution from where they are here in the States. So it's those kind of connections, as opposed to, a real exploring different communities around the world. It's sort of like these spotlight stories about how we're living, that more than likely we're hoping is shining a light on, who we are as a global community, and the different things that we're facing, and sort of drawing some cohesion with the kind of, knowing these similarities.
Yeah, and some of the achievements as well, which is always great to show.
Yeah.
Side note, I do tangents from time to time, but this is going to be one of them. Watching your documentary series, I'll Make Me a World, I was a kid when I watched The Color Purple. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And so because I was a kid, I was not aware of all the pushback the movie got from Black men, and mostly in some of the Black community. And watching that introduced an idea to me that I lived through but don't remember. And it was a weird, surreal feeling, like, how could anyone watch this movie and not just see absolute greatness? But I think whenever any of us are put on the spot, even if it's true, we don't see that in ourselves. And it reminds me of a piece of advice I got a long time ago that I've held on to for a while now, which is, if you ever want to know something about yourself, ask someone else. And they'll tell you exactly who you are and what you're lacking and what you're like and what you might do in a way that you won't understand. You don't know that you're that way. And if enough people tell you you're a certain way, that's probably how you are being perceived or how you actually are. Right. So that was great. And I thank you for being even a part of that and letting that exist in the world. Now, you probably wouldn't describe yourself, Denise, as a gatekeeper. Right. And I don't think I would describe you that way either. But I know for this audience, a lot of the folks listening, they want to know how to pitch. And so we hear that all the time. I was just on a panel this weekend on how to raise funds and what makes for a great pitch. And you're an individual that listens to pitches and gives away money. So I thought for this audience, it'd be great just to hear from you. What were the winning elements for the pitch on Wednesdays in Mississippi, which is Marlene McCurtis and Joy Silverman?
Yeah, what a great project and a great pitch. I have to say that all 5 projects that pitched that day came with all the wonderful elements of a pitch, starting with the passion and the story. So, I think when we're listening to pitches, we want to hear that the passion's going to take to the finish line. So, and that passion's going to drive the really intense storytelling and deep dive that it takes to build the story. But then all those other elements, thinking about that funding gap, putting some thought to what the engagement or their audience strategy is going to be. So, the bottom line, it's about the story and then all that passion that fuels it. but just to be, and I have to underscore the story part, because sometimes there's a lot of passion that packages a strong idea, or it almost comes off like advocacy, but just wanting to get a message. And so those are easy to tease out. And, I encourage anybody that's pitching to sit back and think, okay, I do want to talk about the environment, but what's my story? That kind of thing. So
that's perfect. And it's really great to hear it from you, because it validates something that we've been saying for 6 years now, which is that story is king. And when we've invested in our films, we invested in the filmmakers. We call them filmmaker founders, because we view them as founders of startups. Yeah. And sometimes you sit in a room with some of these guys and gals and you're like, oh, they're going to do it no matter what. Right. They're so passionate. They're on it. They're going to do it whether we get involved or not. And let's get on this moving train. Right. And to me, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, there are a lot of elements of pitch, and I do, honestly find it easier, at least for me, to find reasons to disqualify you than to look for reasons to qualify you. Right. Like, oh, this is going to be a rights issue, or, oh, I don't think they can execute, or they're not as passionate, or their story isn't there, for example. Right. And so that's my approach, but I love that we're similar in that approach for figuring out what a winning pitch is. This is great, because people listening to this should go out right away to the website and figure out how they can be a part of this. So that's what I'd like to ask you next is, you talked a little bit about the 360 Incubator program already, but can you tell everybody how they can get involved, how filmmakers can get involved in this, where they should go step by step? Sure.
So our 360 Incubator is coming up. That is one program that is every other year, because it's pretty intensive. It'll have an application much like the open call. In fact, this year we're going to fold it into the open call. And as looking for filmmakers with experience, we're looking for projects that are well into pre-production or early in production. And it can be on any subject matter. It can be short form, long form, and it'll be a standard application. And for us, we do a 2-tier process where we lean on our community of filmmakers, seasoned makers, programmers, funders, to help review the films, the applications. And then from there, we'll offer a spot in the incubator. We're looking at 5 spots right now. And it'll kick off in January. The actual incubator will run from January to March, and at the end of April is pitch black. Wow. So if you have a project idea that's in early production, the open call that's coming up, it'll be announced in August. Applications will open in September. That's the opportunity for you. So the incubator, I should just say that, in considering it, it's a workshopping experience. We pair you with a mentor, and then so you'll have access to someone in the field to answer questions, and it could be on anything. When we review projects for the incubator, we're looking for something that has really strong potential, but might need a little support, maybe in their funding strategy, or maybe even their treatment. Everybody that comes into the incubator has slightly different needs. And but the beauty of it, everybody, since they've been around the track before, they have some skills. And so we really try to develop the networking aspect of it, where the fellows in the incubator, along with the mentors, are sharing experiences. When you work on a film, each film, no matter how long, even if you're considered that seasoned filmmaker. Each film is a learning experience. And so being able to share those tidbits are really crucial.
Yes.
So it's always been, when the incubator started, it was an in-person experience. We went virtual. This coming incubator, we're looking at a hybrid experience. So we will get everybody together for 3 days or so. And then we'll continue the conversation online and then have Pitch Black, which will be a hybrid experience as well.
That's super, super exciting. Yeah, I consider folks like that success managers. Mm-hmm. So let me couple you with a success manager. They're going to make sure that you have a great time. You learn as much as you can learn. And then let's see where your stuff goes from there.
Yeah.
Was there a moment, Denise, growing up that you can remember in your childhood that you sort of realized or had the inkling, the idea that you would want to live a creative life?
Creative, so it actually is late in my career because I've always come to filmmaking on the educational side.
Yeah.
When I was in undergrad, I wanted to go to med school and I couldn't understand why they would, only funnel people out of the chemistry class. And I was like, this is not education. And then understanding the value of PBS, and then understanding, also, I actually, I went to school with the advisor. One of the professors in my department was an advisor on the Cosby Show. And that was sort of like a aha moment. Like, there's a lot of work, really important work going into making these programs have impact. And so I always came to it through that educational piece. And so my first job was in the research department at Sesame Street, trying to understand and work with the writers of Sesame Street, giving them information and what's the best way to deliver it so that it will land with children.
But that's a big leap. That's a big change. What did your family think about you going from med school student to Sesame Street?
Right. Well, that was the time where follow your passion. I don't tell my kids that. So they were all for it. Yeah. So I didn't have any pushback.
Well, my daughter, who's just graduated college, went through the same thing that you described. She wanted to be a peds doctor, and she had to be funneled through this chemistry class, and she had to get a certain grade in that chemistry class in order to graduate and then be accepted to the next part of academia to be a doctor. But along that journey, what happens in college around your junior, senior year is you figure out who you are a little bit better. And then she's like, I kind of like pediatric psychiatry. I kind of like the human side of this more. I'm not into the diagnosis and side of it, chemistry side of it. I kind of like the human side of it and helping kids overcome, childhood traumas and things like that. So there's a pivot happening there. And I think, parents should be open to those pivots. I had a lot of friends that, especially my Indian and Asian friends, where those pivots are absolutely unacceptable. And it really makes them miserable. Yeah. And they have to do little things under their parents' noses to satisfy that itch they have. So you saw that and you just said, "Yep, we're making the switch. We're going to do it. I think I can do this." How did you have that confidence?
I guess I just had the right folks around me each step of the way, with the professor that I was mentioning, who guided me into getting a degree in education. And then that was somehow Sesame Street fell in my lap. Actually, I went to school in Michigan and we got the Canadian version of Sesame Street. And I didn't realize that there were so many different versions that Sesame Street was catering to. And so that even that even what excited me even more. And then so after falling into that, and then I had a professor at in my undergrad who actually, Robin Kelly, I cannot go without mentioning because he's so impactful in my career. He was an advisor at Blackside, the production company in Boston, makers of Eyes on the Prize, that introduced me to this documentary world. And so with that, documentaries kind of took over, even though I kept trying to, keep children's programming in my wheelhouse as well. I mean, occasionally I did other children's projects, but it's just so hard to be that nimble. But yeah.
We've interviewed over 120 creators on this podcast, and there is a common thread as the data increases. The common thread is that successful filmmakers are really smart and they were great in school, and you're no exception. You went to Michigan, it's a great school. You went to UCLA and NYU. There is a debate that's ongoing, it'll never end, about whether you should go to film school or not go to film school. But I am curious, those are pretty far apart. Which experience would you recommend, the NYU experience or the UCLA experience?
I don't think you need to go to film school.
Beautiful.
But it was still very helpful, my experience at NYU. And how I used it was I was already working at Sesame Street at the time, and they went on hiatus, and I had to do something with myself. And while I felt like I could contribute and felt very good in what I was doing in research and casting, at that point, it's probably just research. No, it was casting as well, because when I got into NYU, then I can be really confident what a grip is and a gaffer is. And so all these terms really started to make sense. But, in the indie space and the doc space, you're right. People come from all different types of backgrounds to inform this story, right? And so I don't feel like, that additional material is needed. Like, you can learn that on the set, but going to school, I sort of got a concentrated introduction, able to put my hands on film, and actually do that for the first time, cut for the first time and things like that. But yeah, so if I did make it to that program, I think I would still definitely be solidly in documentaries and maybe even children's programming, and not feel at a loss.
All right, folks, you heard it from Denise Greene herself. No film school.
But you learn so much, when you went through my Iowa top, and you said about the impact that I had, I was actually thinking about all the people that impacted me along the way. So each film experience, I was absorbing so much. I have often said that Blackside was my school, was my university that I graduated from. How to tell a story, all the different creative approaches to filmmaking. I learned it there, and then just built on that and learned how to ask questions there, because it was such a supportive environment that asking questions was really easy and quite fun, because you got so much each time.
This is the decision I made. I looked up the price of film school. At the time, it was, I think, Watkins, which is now owned by Belmont University. Okay. And it was something on the order of $80,000 a year. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, it's a 2-year program, so we're talking $160,000. Would I be more prepared to be successful in this industry, $160,000 in with that degree, or if I took $160 and put it directly into films? and showed up on set every day. And I like to say I made the right choice.
Mm-hmm.
So I put that money into filmmakers, into independent films, and into these experiences. And the rest is history. Here I am talking to Denise Greene on a podcast. So there we go. You mentioned Sesame Street, by the way. I have to know, did you get to cast any of the Muppets? How was that?
I was all in the children's casting, 100% children's casting. Children's casting. And, but we got to be on the set with all the Muppets.
That's really cool, because the thing people might not realize about Sesame Street is that it was really originally designed for inner city Black kids, as a wonderful sort of counter move to some of the systematic shortcomings there were around education for that community.
Yeah.
And so to work on Sesame Street in the 70s and 80s is a really, really big deal. Mm-hmm. And I grew up on it, and I think it's changed now a little bit. I haven't seen it in a while, and I don't think it's as popular with kids as it used to be. Mm-hmm. I'm not a kid, so I don't know. Maybe some kid listening to this can tell me, hey, Chris, no, it's super popular. Right. And I'll gladly take that, but I'm not sure. Do you know if anything changed internally there from a funding or casting or creative standpoint that has made it sort of less impactful on those inner city kids, if that's true?
Yeah, I don't think it's less impactful. I think Sesame Street is still very leading the charge, but there's other players out there, and there's other platforms that kids are going to, and but I still think they're really critical. As you mentioned at the beginning, it was really about those that preschool foundation that I was going for, especially in terms of literacy.
Yes.
But even in its early years, it was branching out to other curriculum goals. And I know by the time we got to 9/11, well, before then, they dealt with death with Mr. Hooper and things like that. So they would take on really big challenges to support preschool age. And I know, I was mentioning 9/11 because they were really critical Sesame Street was really critical in our household in terms of grounding. Children after that tragedy. And I'm sure, I haven't been following it that closely, but I'm sure that's still a base for the different things that kids are handling now. Right. I would not be surprised if they're, in fact, but I have been following a little bit because there is an alumni group. I know.
Oh, nice.
With all the events in the last couple of years, racial reckoning, that their curriculum has been, taking in the challenge by addressing issues of race and acceptance and things like that. So yeah, they're staying in the forefront. They just have other people doing it as well.
I'll check that out for sure. And speaking of alternative platforms for kids, you are famously not very active or active at all on social media. Is that intentional or not?
In a way, it is intentional. Especially when it comes to business, like LinkedIn and things like that. I didn't want people to pigeonhole me and only, I wanted to be able to speak for myself and what I wanted to do as opposed to someone deciding after just reading my profile. And and then as far as socially, with Instagram and Facebook, it's a time suck that I have so many different things going on. However, I do regret it sometimes. I do wish that I would have, recently, I was honored by attending to attend the GLAAD Awards with Mama Gloria for one of our Afropop films. And I was like, I should be, posting this and, pushing up all kinds of pictures, but I didn't. And so it's moments like that where it's just like, I need to up my profile a bit.
When you were at the GLAAD Awards, did you meet Alex Schmitter?
I didn't. No.
We had him on the podcast. And
neat.
Definitely. I don't know what number episode that is, but we'll put that maybe in the show notes. I'll have Elise do that. But definitely go back and check out that episode. I think you'll love it. And same with everyone listening. Really, truly impactful, especially if you're confused about what the actual, not the media version, but the actual standpoint is of a trans person is. It's really impactful. How can a documentary address the rise of, or the seemingly increasing rise of white supremacy in a new way that brings society together instead of fostering more division?
Mm-hmm. That is a good question. Can you ask that again?
Yeah, because I what I see out there a lot is an addressing of this sort of white supremacy movement increasing or becoming more prevalent. But I feel like it's often presented in a way that creates even more division. What would be your way, or is there a way to do a documentary where society can unify on a subject like this?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, that's a difficult question, but a great question. I will answer it, but first I'll say that in terms of Black public media, we're interested in the filmmakers taking whatever voice that they want, whatever they want to amplify, and whatever perspective that they want to offer is what we want to support. So they might not even hit that goal to unify, right? It could all land in healing and understanding and internal conversation, which is completely fine. Number of our films address race in one way or the other, and being Black in America. So that is there. And as far as, offering a conversation about healing, I think, or a conversation about bringing people together for this conversation. It could be something I would want. I don't know what that film looks like, but I think it's a call for possibly addressing, certain issues, like whether it's specific to gun control or specific to racial hatred, those specific calls, and just to see how the filmmaking community would answer that.
And maybe it's even a documentary series would be more effective than a single film would be coming, to be able to approach that balanced view that brought people together versus what I see out there is this is all your fault-ism. And accept it, kind of thing. Right.
And I also feel like a lot of that, the onus goes on the white community, right? And I feel like that they need to ask the question, and then they need to solve, have those conversations, solve the problem in figuring out what that conversation is.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. Like maybe that film should be by a white director, white filmmaker. Yeah, I can see that. Or maybe like a a crew that comes from it from that perspective, regardless of their background or whatever they identify. So, yeah, that's a really interesting idea too.
And there's just not enough of that. I know Whitney Dow is. He's a white filmmaker that has entered that space time after time, and his work is fantastic, phenomenal, and great for offering those conversations. But there needs to be more, filmmakers and other white, community leaders that need to strike up that conversation.
Without question. I'd love to turn this conversation towards tools and tactics of the craft for this audience. And you've been quoted as saying that one of the sort of early mistakes that indie filmmaker makes is not getting an accountant or an investment advisor. So why should we get an accountant and an investment advisor at the pre-production stage?
Or
at any stage. I don't want to pigeonhole you.
Right. It's at your early career stage when you've decided that you're going to be a filmmaker, independent filmmaker. You really need to know what that means in terms of business. What do you need to set up a small company? So ask your accountant, ask your investment advisor, just have those conversations early on so you can set up, a cushion for yourself so you can move from project to project. And then I bet you in turn that will help the negotiation skills when it comes to working on other people's projects and making sure that you're paid so that you can cover your health insurance and your retirement, and think ahead, and just keep that cushion going. So, yeah, I'm glad I said that. I'll say it again.
I find it to be very true. In your opinion, and in your experience, what is the state of funding and financing right now?
I think it's healthy. I see a number of opportunities for funding out there. And looking at what we're doing, we're growing. We're allowed to give we're at the stage of giving bigger amounts. So I think we're in a really good space. I know that various platforms are looking for more Black content, and we just have to be vigilant in making sure that their definition of Black content includes all Black voices. And so the more that we can fund and support our filmmakers that are working in different spaces, whether it's their creative approach or their stories that they choose to tell, I think we can keep this momentum going. And it's no secret that if it wasn't for the protests and the, around George Floyd, beyond that, opened up those avenues, but they're not going to remain open unless we continue to keep being vocal about it.
They're making great content as well.
Yeah.
What about for non-Black creators and filmmakers? What do you think the funding world is for them right now? And are there avenues that you know about that have been sort of lucrative and open to pitches?
Yeah, I actually don't know. I'm so focused on, to tell you the truth. Sorry.
That's okay. That's totally all right. There is, it reminds me of that old joke where a white person will say, why do you get a Black History Month? Where's our White History Month? And you say, well, all the other months are White History Month. And so I guess in this case, the idea is that if you are sort of an underserved community for funding, these things are necessary to get that voice and to even the playing field, if you will. And then for everyone else, those traditional avenues are open to you depending on if your story is great or not. And we spend the lion's share, frankly, of this podcast, not this particular conversation, but our podcast over the years, focusing on those other places where you can get that funding anyway. So, I think those avenues are open and understood. I would love to take you through a quick sort of speed round of questions, but that doesn't mean you have to answer them quickly. I just, they're sort of coupled together. I'm curious, what is the biggest challenge you've overcome as a filmmaker, and how did you overcome it?
The biggest challenge, I guess, would be, I guess, we kind of touched on this before, but self-promotion. And how did I overcome it? I called it out right in its face. I just thinking early on, working in Black Side, I was just noticing, people moving up. And it was all about, it wasn't so much that they were moving up, but they're just really vocal about all the great stuff that they're doing. So I was just like, I should speak up a little bit more. And I just called it out in his face. I spoke with the producer that I was working under, and I was just like, is this what it takes to make it in this business? And he was kind of like, yeah. So I'm still learning that, obviously, but it is one of my hurdles that I continually have to work on, which is self-promotion.
Yeah. I took a DISC profile. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's one of these personality tests, and DISC is an acronym. It's DISC. And, C is like your high compliance, right? And I is like where you're a giant self-promoter. And I'm like, I was considered a high I. And I was like, okay, I'm in the right field. Because I know how to naturally just talk about myself. I'm just going to put it out there. So, I think anyone that wants to kind of know more about themselves, I think it's the most comprehensive personality test you can take is the DISC profile. It's better than Myers-Briggs to me, and it's better than Enneagram, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I've taken all those as well. So I'm speaking from experience. The DISC profile is great because it teaches you who you are in casual settings and who you are in professional settings. And the feedback I got from my DISC profile was that the danger with me is that I'm the same person in both places. And there should actually be an adjustment of professionalism or an adjustment of behavior when you're in a professional space. So I bring the regular Chris to the professional space, and it could be a problem. So I learned all the things and practiced and learned all the different ways to sort of curb that potential lack of professionalism that I could bring to a professional situation. Not perfect at it, but this profile revealed what those things are and how I could practice getting better at them. So,
wow. Yeah. And so they gave you steps on how to get better. And
it's a giant booklet, Denise. So yeah, it's like 60 pages. Yeah. Is
this with a C or with a K?
C.
C. Okay.
C. Yep. DISC. Yep. Okay. So there, if anyone from DISC is listening, I'll take that commission now. You mentioned Robin Kelly earlier. What are the two best pieces of advice you've received in your career, and who did they come from?
Two best pieces of advice. Well, those early on pieces I think are really critical and foundational, even though they might seem small. And one is from Gabrielle Howard at Sesame Street. She works in casting. And she said, get there a half hour earlier before call time. And that's that basic urging to be more than on time, be ready, but also just to be ready emotionally and everything else before, be well rested and nimble, because the kids are going to come in, and this is going to be needed and that and blah, blah, blah. But if you had that space of prior, it serves you well. And I take that, I've taken that and run with it. So, yeah. And let's see if I have another one. Gosh. I don't know. I have to say, Leslie Fields Cruz, who is the executive director now at BPM. I've been working at BPM on and off, when it was earlier called the NBPC, National Black Programming Consortia. Yeah. And so it wasn't so much like actual spoken advice, but and along the lines of this self-promotion thing, she would constantly just push me into areas where I had to, promote BPM, promote myself, promote, whatever. So, so in that, the advice is just jump in the water.
Put yourself on death ground.
Yes, exactly.
As Sun Tzu would say.
Yeah.
I think that's really great advice, actually. Yeah. You will be surprised what you can accomplish when you send your ships away. Yeah. And the only way forward and to survive is through the obstacle that's in front of you. So that's truly believe in that. Yeah. Which creatives do you most admire and want to emulate, Denise? And what do they do from a technical or skill standpoint that makes their work stand apart?
That's a fun question.
Thank you.
Yeah. There's so many, actually. I get introduced to really great talent over and over again. And so I love Madeline Hunt Ehrlich. I love her approach to storytelling. I love her approach to Black history and using the gaps in what we know about our history as not as a deficit, but as not only a creative approach, but also a way to celebrate our history too. Mm-hmm. So, and with that, my eyes are really open to experimental documentary nonfiction storytelling, mm-hmm. Especially from Black creatives, because I just feel like there's a language that's being built or has already been built. I know that A.J. Fielder, he's also another big fan of mine. He's been working in that space and talking about our creative approach in that way for a number of years. And so, I really like those conversations, and I really like to see films and how that's played out in their work. So big fan of Rada Blank too. Okay. What she did at the Met Gala, I think, is what I'm talking about in terms of storytelling. And she did it in a different platform from her 40-year-old version. But still creating storytelling and narratives in a unique way that really taps deep into the emotion. And so, I would spotlight those filmmakers. And lastly, I'm going to say Amir Lewis, who I call a story whisperer. He's an editor, and he he is my husband, so I get to hear stories taking shape and how he's, seeing the elements and hearing how he is crafting a really dramatic story out of these elements. And so yeah, that's husband wife aside, I just really admire how he could tell a story and really pick out where the dramatic moments are. And then if they're not there, he can tweak them in such a way that really grabs your attention and giving you that narrative thrust that you're looking for and keeps you on the edge of your seat, kind of thing. So.
That's incredibly sweet. And you've now become the envy of every creator listening to this that wants a partner that supports them in that way. It's about 50-50, you get sometimes you get a partner who just kind of is like passive aggressively holding you back and smiling and saying they support you. And then you have people like yourself where you're like, that's my biggest, one of my biggest inspirations is my husband who's a creator. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's very, very good. If you had 1 month to teach someone how to be a producer, what would be the first 3 things you teach them? So this is a person who has somehow gotten a producing gig, whether by hook or crook, and they are completely out of their element. They've come to you. They're desperate. Denise, I have to look confident. What are the first 3 things you teach them in the first 30 days?
Right. And this is documentary, right?
Sure.
Okay. So I guess the first thing is to, get your story down and just write it down. This is a project that came to them. That's what you're saying? Yep.
They've been added as a producer.
But not a director, a producer/director.
Okay. Well, if you want to take it that place, you can as well.
Okay. So the scenario is the person gets added onto a project as a producer, and it's their first time.
First time. And they don't know anything about producing.
Okay. So I would, as a producer, tell this first-time producer to first find other films that are similar in the subject matter, and just get well-versed in what's out there already on that film and what's not out there. And as they're reviewing these films for story, they're also looking at credits for funders, for other supporters of the film. And they're also looking for potential crew. So, and that first, what you want to land first is that writer, that director to help you, and that researcher, if this is a documentary piece, that's going to help you tell the story. So watch a lot of films. Get some information on potential funders that can be traditional film funders or funders that are foundations, for instance, that are in a space that, are aligned with what your story's about. And then get the writer and the researcher and the director on board to put that story down. And then over the course of time, that story is going to build out with more research and more questions around the story just to make it stronger.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I love this idea of looking at the credits. I think I'm crazy when I do that. And now I feel validated. I always look at the credits to see who the EP was and to look at the crew and the writers. It's so I'm always deeply interested in how the thing maturated from the beginning, how it was nurtured. So that's so fantastic. You've been quoted as saying that for every hour of a documentary, you should dedicate 1 year. My question to you, as someone who's very, very interested in efficiency and achieving something that is above, sort of the median. How do we cut that in half as a documentarian? Like, how would you cut the time in half? So instead of, I have a 2-hour documentary, now I need 2 years. How can I do a 2-hour documentary in 1 year?
You have to hire, you have to have money to hire enough people. Yeah. Split the task, delegate, and everybody's coming to the table, helping to craft the story, and you can do it quicker if you have multiple researchers. Money.
Are there, if you didn't, and this could be overly challenging, but if you didn't have access to that additional fund or funds or financing, are there any tactics that you know of or tools that you know of that could maybe take the work of one researcher and double it up, for example? Are there any websites, any software, any tools that you've used that kind of double the work of one person, or typically of one person?
Yeah, I haven't been deep in the space that way in a while, but just knowing that now everything's online, I'm sure I'm speaking on my experience where when you did research, you actually did, it was a travel trip. So now that everything's quicker, that will probably cut things down. I don't know of any particular like online tools to help with that. But what I really appreciated early on was having feedback. And so maybe that is something that can accelerate the process. Like if you don't have additional money, still, reach out to that seasoned producer or, another producer, director type and just get feedback so that you can, shape the film quicker.
So in post, make the post edit faster.
Yeah. We can make I was thinking even earlier on, just continuing to get people's feedback on how the film is taking shape, so that you're not in there, month after month, sort of working solo, or just your small team.
Got it.
Yeah.
They say you can't throw money at an election and win, but you can throw money at a documentary and win. Denise, this has been an amazing time.
You have to have the story.
But the story is still king. That's right. You've been an amazing guest. This has been so much fun. I love having a conversation where I get to learn something new, and that's certainly been accomplished here. Can you tell everybody where they can find you on the internet, where they can see some of your work?
So you can definitely go to blackpublicmedia.org and sign up for our newsletter. And then you'll learn about what's coming up and what films are going to premiere soon. And then you'll also get to our social media platforms. So I'll sign up for our newsletter, go to our website. And then for me, I'm at Real Greene on Instagram. But as we already talked about, I'm hardly ever there, but you can visit. And that's Greene with the E on the end. That's REELGREENE. And I think that's it. Yeah. We have a YouTube page. Black Public Media has a YouTube page where you can see Afropop. And then some of our other programs, our pitch sessions, you can see online too. So I think the place to go to is our website.
That's awesome. And then I know that you can watch some of the films you've worked on in the past at your Vimeo page as well. And so if you type in Denise Greene into Vimeo, you will get some of her stuff. You can watch it there as well and support. And I think you should absolutely do that. Let's end on this. Just so people know, because these episodes are published sort of well after the conversation happens. We are recording this the day after a horrible tragedy in Texas shooting of now 16 dead elementary students. And this comes just a few weeks after a horrific grocery store shooting in Buffalo, New York. Is there a message of hope or of caution you can offer this audience?
Mm. Oh, wow. Yeah, it's hard to stay steady with the recent events. And I guess the message of hope, is of community. Mm-hmm. And, that's what we try to build all the time with storytelling. But, it's not like, I think everything comes in community strength, a place to rest and regroup, and a place to build and think about and strategize. So all that is important, and the more we hear each other through, and stories can help that. Stories can just offer a natural place of understanding each other. I think we'll be in a much better space. So yeah. That's where I think the hope lies.
I love that, and it's a wonderful place to end. Denise, you are the best. And for those listening in the audience, please go out, find her, support her work on the various platforms, blackpublicmedia.org, and on Vimeo and YouTube, as she mentioned. And if you want to get in touch with me, we are at contact@bonsai.film, and you can find us anywhere podcasts are listened to. Denise, I'll talk to you soon.
Yes. Thank you so much. I had such a fun time. I really appreciate this conversation.
Likewise. And I know we'll be in touch soon. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, gang. One more thing before you go. I want to talk to you about Indie Insights. Indie Insights is our bi-weekly newsletter and love note to the film industry, movies, and the creatives that make them, not to mention you, our esteemed listeners. Inside, you'll find curated industry trends, articles, exclusive commentary, and underappreciated films from filmmakers like you worldwide. And the best part is that it's completely free. So, join today at www.bonsai.film. It just takes a few seconds, and once you sign up, you'll get the very next newsletter. It's that simple. Go to www.bonsai.film to get Indie Insights, our bi-weekly newsletter, and join a network of film creatives like yourself. And don't worry, we'll never sell your information or spam you with a bunch of nonsense emails, just the bi-weekly film industry goodness you need. And if you ever tire of Indie Insights, we hope not, but if you do, simply unsubscribe. No gimmicks, no games. So, one more time, go to www.bonsai.film to get Indie Insights for free. And thank you for listening.